Good afternoon and welcome. I see quite a few of you logging in for our Career Ed this afternoon. So thank you. We'll get started in just a moment, but Maddie, I want to get the controls sent over your way. So I will be sending you the option to become a presenter, and I believe that should unmute you. Oh, how about now?
Can you hear me?
I can. How are you, Maddie?
Good. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for presenting for us. Do you plan on sharing a screen, a webcam, or neither?
I have some slides ready to go, so I think I'll share my screen if that's okay.
Perfect. And do you have access to do that now? No, I need to send that to you.
All right. Can you see my screen?
I can. Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and just hang tight. And we're just a little bit before 1, so we can make sure we get all of our students to join. And then we'll get started. Maddie, are you okay if we record this?
Yep, that's perfectly fine.
Excellent. So far I see Emma, Jaden, Jesse, Leanna, and Sienna. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll get started in just a few minutes, so just take a seat and hang tight. All right, we're a little bit past 1, so we'll go ahead and jump on in. I'm Mrs. Nedved, and those of you who I haven't had in class yet, I'm a high school math teacher here at Branson School Online. And if you know me, you know that I am the most left-brained math nerd, linear thinker out there. But Maddie is my dear friend. We go all the way back to I don't want to say what year, but probably sophomore year of high school, well over 10 years ago. We went to high school together. We both are from South Dakota. And she is now like the name to be, especially around the South Dakota parts. Has created a wonderful business for herself. Started out with photography. I have some cute pictures of my kid if anyone wants to see them that she took. But she has been wonderful. She is awesome what she does. I follow her on Instagram. And of course in real life because we're truly friends, but she's got a wonderful presence and she's been so grateful to be here today. So I'll turn it over to her in just a moment. As she's going throughout her presentation, if you have any questions, please just throw them out in the questions box and that will actually come to me. She doesn't see that, but at the end, we'll go ahead and I'll just relay those all to her. So we'll have some time at the end as long as we're doing okay for time for questions and answers. But if you think of it during the session, throw it out there. We'll address it all at the end. And if it's something that I think, oh, this should be addressed right away, then I'll interrupt her. But otherwise, those will come to me and I will pass them along. So without further ado, go ahead, Maddie, take it over.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. As mentioned, my name is Maddie Peschong, and I'm a photographer in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, right in the Midwest. I got started with photography kind of on accident. I went to school for journalism and mass communications. I've always loved to write, and that was really what I was interested in as I explored college. And the school that I ended up going to did a really good job with showing not just journalism as far as writing, but really anything related to communication. And so that's what my degree is in. And toward the end of my time there, I did a lot of internships in social media and digital media. And so by the time I graduated, those were the jobs that I was looking for. I took one photography class in college and I really did not like it, but toward the end of the semester, I guess I was interested enough to keep learning. And so I went home over Christmas break, I got a camera and just kind of dove into YouTube and Google University. And that's really where I first learned photography. So fast forward a little bit, and I graduate college. And within a couple of months of graduation, I actually had a job offer at a company called Wells Enterprises, and they make Blue Bunny ice cream. So it was really a dream job. I ran all of their social media for a couple of years, all the while still building my business on the side, and didn't really have much intention of it being bigger than that. I loved my marketing job, and that's kind of what I was interested in. So after a couple of years at Wells, again, total dream job, my husband and I decided to move back to South Dakota. We wanted to have a family, and we thought being back in South Dakota would be just a good plan. So we moved to Sioux Falls, which was about an hour away from the town that we grew up in, which was just about perfect, close enough, but not too close that our families could just pop in unannounced. So we thought that that was a really good plan. And I got another dream job, really. It could not have been more different from my previous job, as opposed to being at like an in-house position. I was at an agency, so I had a lot of different clients as opposed to just working for one brand. And I worked on the account team. So my job was really to keep the client happy, to work with them on their digital and social media goals and help execute those. So we would run Facebook ads, email campaigns, Google campaigns, and really just try to achieve whatever the client was wanting to achieve, more sales, more brand awareness, whatever, but on the digital, in the digital space. And that's when my business really started to take off. I think some of it was, being back in South Dakota certainly was helpful. I was working in a digital field, and so I had a really good understanding for how to grow a business on digital and social media. And when we moved back to South Dakota, both my mom and my husband said, "You're not going to do this photography thing full time, right? Because there's a lot of photographers in Sioux Falls. I just don't think that's a good idea." And that wasn't my intention, but I think I'm far from a rebel, but I don't like being told what to do. And there was definitely a part of me that was kind of like, "Oh, watch me. Like, you don't think I can do that? Watch me." And the business grew and grew. And last July, I left the job that I had, which was a wonderful job, great bosses, great coworkers, but I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was actually making about twice as much in my photography job as I was making at my agency job, which was good pay. But the business was just exploding. So it didn't make sense anymore for me to stay in that position. We have 2 young kids, and it was just time. So I made the leap to full-time photography, and I've been, I guess, a full-time entrepreneur ever since. So let me see if I can figure out how to transition the slide here. Perfect. So I consider myself mostly a personal and commercial brand photographer. And what that means is I work with people, mostly women, who own either personal or commercial businesses. A personal business would be like a florist or an interior designer or a web designer. That would be more of a personal business, photographer, for example. And then a commercial business is going to be a little bit bigger. So I have, and that could really run the gamut. So one of the photos that's on your screen right now on the upper right-hand corner, that's a company called Little Sleepies, and they make pajamas for babies and little kids. So that's a client of mine. The client in the upper row in the middle, she's a graphic designer. At the bottom right, she's a florist. The bottom row in the middle, that's another baby and kid clothing boutique. So my clients kind of run the gamut, and that's the way I like it. I work with interior designers, florists, photographers, big companies, little companies, and I basically supply them with images that they can use to grow their brand. And so I really found a way to take photography, which was a great creative outlet for me, and pair it with something that was kind of where my heart has always been, which is marketing. So I like to say that I take pretty pictures, but they've got a purpose, and I really enjoy that. So I do still do some wedding photography, so that's in the upper left-hand corner. I'm definitely getting away from weddings. I love doing weddings. They're so fun, but they're on the weekend and they take up a lot of time, and I have 2 little kids. So I'm transitioning my business to do fewer and fewer of those. And even though I do love them and they're once in a lifetime type shots, branding and marketing just makes so much more sense for me as a person. So I've been really excited about that transition. Oh, there we go. So a typical day in a job like mine is going to be different every single day. And that's really why I like it. I might spend a lot of time on a certain day on Instagram stories or on social media or Facebook or my blog, like that more digital realm. I do a lot of connecting with people. I'll talk about this a little later, but I'm getting into running workshops and mentoring and education and masterminds. And so a lot of that is actually generated through Instagram, which is pretty crazy. A lot of my business comes through Instagram. I might be shooting, whether that is a wedding or a commercial shoot. I might be editing. I might be working on some behind the scenes type stuff. I might be like filming a video for an educational thing that I'm doing. This week, I'm in major prep mode because my workshop is on Saturday. So I've got, oh gosh, it's a good thing the webcam's not on because my office is full of like just a bunch of crazy stuff for swag bags for the attendees, and it's a total disaster. But every day is different, and that's what I really love about it. I like a balance of shooting and editing and behind the scenes. I probably like the behind the scenes stuff, like the numbers and the marketing and the branding more than your average creative photographer. And that's probably a good thing because I specialize in branding. So I really do like the behind the scenes type stuff. But I also love the client interaction that comes with being on location somewhere and shooting. So I don't think this is going to play sound. Yeah, I turned the sound off. So I'll just play a few seconds of this, but this is behind the scenes of a branding session. And these are my favorite sessions right now. I love, love, love working with other business women who, especially who have small personal brands very similar to mine. So this is a recent video that we did just showing the behind the scenes and what we get at a branding session. The goal at a branding session is to have my client walk away with months worth of content for social media and also just for their marketing. So maybe they're creating like a PDF download guide. This is a florist, obviously, and her name is Katie. So maybe Katie is putting together a educational series on her blog and she needs imagery for it, but she doesn't want to get stock imagery because she wants something that's more personal to her business. So that's something that a branding session would be used for. So these are my favorite sessions right now. Oftentimes they end up with myself and the client like grabbing coffee or wine afterward because it's just fun to talk with other small business owners. And a lot of the people that I'm working with oftentimes haven't been in business quite as long as I have. And so it's so fun to hear where they're at and kind of help them out along the way.
If you have the link to that YouTube video, I can post.
Yes, I can definitely send it.
Okay, awesome. And if not within today's session, if you can email it to me, if anyone is interested in it, I can send it out that way either. But we can send it through the questions box to everyone if we get it before the session's over.
Oh,
thanks, Maddie.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. So all of the fun stuff aside, that's not to say that this job doesn't come with challenges. Of course it does. Any job does. I think that the biggest thing that comes with being a business owner that is difficult for me is I am pretty extroverted. I like talking to people, but I don't like confrontation. I'm not a confrontational person. And when you're building a business and when you're it, like you're the CEO and you're the assistant and you're kind of everything, there's confrontation that comes with that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but it can be a little bit uncomfortable. So having clients that maybe get a project back that they're not happy with, I've had issues in the past where like a product wasn't photographed in the way that the client wanted. And most of the time, I will say I work with amazing people, amazing clients, and they're doing the exact same thing I'm trying to do. They're just trying to build their business. So most of the time we have really great conversations and we're able to collaborate and solve the problem, but it is still uncomfortable. And even though I consider myself more of a business person than a creative, it is still hard to get negative feedback. Like I do sometimes get a little bit upset and defensive when people say like, oh, I didn't like this style, or I didn't like how you styled that, or I don't like the colors in this image. Like that's still hard to hear. I think it's good. I think it builds you up as a person and as an entrepreneur and all those things, but it's still super hard. It can be really hard. And it also is difficult to sometimes put those feelings aside and just put your client hat on and deal with it. There have been definitely a few times that I've just wanted so desperately to tell somebody off because they're being completely unreasonable. And you can't do that because word of mouth and referrals are absolutely everything. And one bad review can destroy years of hard work. And so sometimes you just have to bite your tongue. And that's a really challenging thing to do. So probably the most crazy thing that's happened to me as a photographer is in about 2016 in January 2016, I was on maternity leave with my first baby, and I had shot a wedding in about November or December. And I posted some previews on Facebook. Didn't really think anything of it. They were not my favorite photos. The photo on my screen is the one I'm talking about. It was a little warm for my taste. It was obviously taken inside. I prefer photos taken outside, but it was a really sweet moment. That's really what it was all about. So I posted it and woke up the next morning. My husband's getting ready to go to work. I'm feeding the baby. I'm on maternity leave, so I'm kind of taking the morning slow. And I start getting all of these messages from people saying that my photo was on the front page of Reddit. And I'm very fluent in social media, but I don't use Reddit. And so I was confused as to what that even meant. And it was just kind of a bizarre situation. And so within a couple of hours, again, just that in and of itself was really cool. It was the same day that an actor from the Harry Potter series died. And so I think that was like the #1 thing on Reddit, and this photo was the #2. So totally bizarre. And within a couple of hours, I was getting phone calls from the media. It started out as just like local news stations. There was a news station in Kentucky, I think, that called me because they had just passed some service dog legislation, and they wanted an interview about this bride with her service dog. And then by about noon or 1, I had gotten an email in my inbox from the Huffington Post. And that was the one that kind of made me like drop everything, because I was an avid reader of the Huffington Post. So that was just so cool to see, hi from Huffington Post in my inbox. And it just snowballed from there. It got shared on social media so many different times by Ashton Kutcher, by Zooey Deschanel and Hello Giggles and People Magazine. And it actually ended up getting printed in People Magazine twice. Once it was the centerfold of People, and once it was like part of the annual recap of all of the like cool stories that they've posted. I think it was like the winner or something for animal stories from the year. So published in People Magazine twice. Just got a ton of traction, and it was an absolutely crazy ride. It was mostly really cool. It was really exhausting. I had just had a baby, and I was like having news crews to my house, so it was kind of strange. It was really overwhelming for myself and for the bride, who struggles with anxiety and depression, and that's why she has a service dog. So she was great. She used it as a platform to talk about that, which is really powerful. And so we felt really compelled to do the interviews, but it was really tiring. And we often joke that it was an awesome experience and one we hope never happens again. But it was very cool, and it's neat to be able to say that I have been published in People Magazine. As far as training or education to become a photographer, you don't need much. I think that really anybody can become a photographer. Anybody can pick up a camera and start shooting and practice. I think where the magic comes in is learning how to be a business owner. And that is something that I wish I would have had more experience in before I started a business. I took marketing classes. I have always been interested in branding. Like those things came easy to me, but business, like taking a business class and learning how to do my books and my numbers. Mrs. Nedved will tell you that that was not a strength of mine in high school, and I'm getting better. I have decided that practical math, applicable math is really fun for me. I love looking at my books and being able to say, oh my gosh, I had a 40% increase in revenue from last year. Like I love being able to look at those numbers and see the story that they tell. But it was a learning curve. It was a major learning curve. So you know, pick up a camera if it's something that you're interested in, start shooting and all of those things. But as you're doing that, don't forget about the business side, because that's really where the skills I think need to come in. And I also think that that's where you find people who can stand the test of time. I want to say the average, I don't know if it's the average business or if it's the average photography business lasts like 5 to 7 years. It's not very long. The rate of burnout is incredibly high because people lower their prices to compete and then run themselves into the ground, and it's not a scalable business model. So understanding how to market and scale your business while still charging what you need to charge and what you need to make, that the business side is so much more helpful than learning what a shutter speed is and an ISO and all those things. So that's what I would tell anyone who wanted to do this. Focus on the business side. So as far as advice for what I would tell someone who's interested, again, focus on the business side. I think that that should be the priority. When it comes to shooting and just getting better at any sort of art, it's practice. That's all that it comes down to. It's picking up a camera every single day and trying to get better. I started shooting in manual basically as soon as I picked up a camera. Like I never really shot in auto. I was really bad. I mean, I wasn't good at shooting in manual, but I was trying. And that's all that it's about. It's just trying to get better every single day. I also see a lot of newbie photographers who will pick up a camera and immediately start like booking clients and maybe charging, maybe not, but acting as a professional. And I would say if this is something that you want to do long term, slow your roll a little bit. Like take it slow, just shoot, just take pictures for yourself, maybe for your family. Don't worry about booking. That will come if you know what you're doing. But for a while, just practice. Just practice. So everybody always wants to talk about money, and I totally understand that. I want to talk about money. Money's a big deal, and as an entrepreneur, you want, you know, I think a lot of us who are business owners, like we leave our jobs so we can like make more money and spend more time with our families, and like that's the dream, right? But is that the reality? And I think the average salary for a photographer is far from average, to be honest with you. I am in a lot of Facebook groups that have photographers in them, and you'll see people commenting that they made $10,000 this year, and you'll see people commenting that they made just short of $1 million this year. Like it is literally across the board. I will say the photographers who make the most money diversify their income, and this is something that I'm working on doing, and it's made a giant difference. I think my revenue this year compared to last year is, I want to say, close to a 50% increase or more, and a lot of that is due to passive income, meaning that I like made a digital product and I'm selling it, and I made it one time and I can continue to sell it and make money from it. There are photographers who get into the education space, which is something that I'm doing as well, mentoring other photographers, working on workshops and events, and just diversifying. And I was having a conversation the other day with a friend about this, and she was talking about how sometimes people who do this get labeled as a sellout because they're not making all their money from photography. And that just really fires me up because that's the smart thing to do. You shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. You should diversify, because what happens if one thing ends tomorrow, or what happens if I like become blind next week? Like, there are so many things that go into this that like you need a backup plan. You need a couple backup plans, and there's no shame in that. That's a really, really good thing. So can you make a lot of money doing this? Absolutely you can. You totally can. But you have to, nobody's going to do it for you, right? So you've got to figure out what you should be pricing, or what you should price your services at, so you're making enough to feed your family and pay your bills and all of those things. You've got to figure out how you can diversify your income so you feel safe and like it's not all going to drop out from under you tomorrow. So absolutely you can make a lot of money. And if you want to just kind of do something like this on the side and have some fun money, you can do that too. And that's what I did for years. Before I went full time, when I wasn't making as much money, we used my photography money to, oh, there's an airplane if you guys can hear that, sorry. We had initially used the money that I was making from photography to pay for our honeymoon. We paid for a couple of vacations with it. Eventually we paid off all of our student loan debt. We remodeled our kitchen, and we were basically debt free by the time I left my full-time job, which made it a lot easier of a transition to quit a job and move to something else. So there are so many flexible ways to do a side hustle, and I'm really happy with how I went about it. Even though it was the long road, it was the road that set us up for the most success for sure. Oh, back to Obama. One of the things that Mrs. Nedved had sent over was a question, is there room for advancement? And I thought that that was really interesting, because with something like photography, or really with any creative business where you are your own boss, there is so much room for advancement, but you have to want it. And so some of the things that I've been doing as I want to scale back a little bit on photography and like the actual shooting of it is just branching out into totally new areas. I'm launching a podcast on October 1st, and I just finished the last episode today, the last episode that will go live on October 1st, and it's going to be an educational podcast about personal branding. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be doing that, and I hope that that helps advance my career, both like as an awareness piece, and hopefully eventually I would love to monetize it and add ad space and all of that. So that's something that I'm doing. In the top right hand corner, this is from a mentoring client of mine, and she uses my photo presets on her images. So this is like an example of what a preset looks like, and presets are something that I sell, that I make money from. So I've been working on those digital products to sell more and more of those to make income from other ways. And then the bottom right hand photo is just me with my podcast mic because I thought it was fun. But you can absolutely, there's so much room for advancement. And I think a lot of the time what you see photographers do, you kind of get to a point where you only feel so good about charging $5,000 to $10,000 or more for something like a wedding or a commercial gig or whatever it might be. Commercial gig, maybe not so much, but sometimes when you raise your prices to keep up with the demand, you do get to a point where you're like, man, I don't feel good about that. I don't feel good about charging that much money. And so that is where I think education can kind of come in, where you can kind of turn around and say, okay, I've gotten to a point where I'm charging really incredible prices for my business. So what can I do with that? Can I teach other photographers or other creatives how to kind of do what I did? And so that's what I'm kind of working on now. And I'm learning a lot as I go, but it's a lot of fun. I feel really blessed and proud to have been in business for 8 years, and I am excited to share that with others. So that's what I'm working on now. And I think, yeah, that's it. So again, I'm Maddie Peschong. I've got some contact information here. My website's maddiepeschong.com. After I'm done sharing my screen, I will drop that YouTube video into the chat for Mrs. Nedved. And I'm at Maddie Peschong on just about every social media. Feel free to connect. I do a lot of education on Instagram, and I would love to have you there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll go grab that link. And I would love to answer any questions you have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maddie. I learned a lot. I hope you guys all did too. I think they're so interesting. And, you know, I obviously follow her on Instagram. Like I said, we've been best friends for years, but I still learned a ton just seeing the behind the scenes that goes on. So those of you who are here with me live, any questions you have, as I mentioned at the beginning, go ahead and shoot them out into the questions box. They'll come to me and I can go ahead and relay those to Maddie. If you are watching this as a recording and you have questions, you are welcome to reach out to me. Shoot me an email. Again, I'm Mrs. Nedved. I'll pass it along to Maddie and we'll get an answer back to you. So Maddie, I have had a few questions already come in. Don't hesitate to keep them coming. If you prefer, you are also welcome to raise your hand and I can unmute you that way too. But the first question was, how long were you at college and how long did it take you to earn your degree?
Oh, that's a great question. So I was in college for 3 years. It technically took me about 3.5 to earn my degree. I ended up with a double major in mass communications and journalism and graphic design. I did that because it was, I was just a couple credits shy of having a graphic design double major because the two different degrees had a lot of similarities. I also graduated in 3.5 years because I got to about winter of my junior year and realized that I was about 2 credits short of graduating that year. And it just seemed really silly to me to come back and pay for an entire extra, like additional year of school for 2 credits basically. And so my professor, I always had really good relationships with my professors and they totally advocated for me and helped me finish that summer. So I graduated in 3 years plus a summer course.
Which is really incredible, I'm going to know, because it's not like she did that and she got 2 bachelor's degrees. So she worked very hard, but that was excellent. Maddie, also, do you do senior pictures or pictures for seniors in high school?
I do, yeah. If you go to my website, you'll notice that it's pretty heavily focused on wedding and branding, and that's done consciously because what I've noticed is even if I'm not advertising it, if I'm not posting about it, I will still get inquiries for it. So for example, I don't shoot newborn photography, I don't advertise newborn photography, and I still probably at least twice a month get inquiries for newborn photography. So I just make it a point to not advertise anything that I don't love doing because I know that say I have like a dead spell where I want to book stuff, I'll probably still get those inquiries anyway. So, and I don't want to confuse people. I want them to know where my expertise is, I suppose. So I do senior photography. It's actually a hidden page on my website so people can't find it. And I'm the same thing as with weddings. I'm scaling back a little bit. I do like working with seniors, but again, most of the time I'm shooting seniors in the evenings. And as my kids get older, they realize when I'm gone and I don't love that. So commercial has been a really great transition for me because I can do it during the day and during the week, which is huge with a family.
Excellent. Also, is taking good pictures hard?
I would say it definitely takes skill and time. I was really overwhelmed the first photography class that I took, the only photography class that I took. I was really overwhelmed and not very good, and it was frustrating. But it's just like with anything, if you stick with it and if you practice, it's kind of funny. When I first started, I remember thinking like, because there are a lot of basically manual dials on a camera that you have to be adjusting constantly as you're shooting. You have to know these numbers like the back of your hand so you can just like turn a dial and go. And if the clouds move and the light changes or the amount of people in the frame changes, like you've got to adjust really fast. And when I first started taking photos, I remember thinking, there's no way I will ever be able to do this quickly, like quick enough to shoot a wedding or quick enough to shoot toddlers. And now I do that every day. So it just takes time and it just takes practice. It's totally a realistic thing to, if you if you give yourself the time and the grace, you can absolutely do it. I firmly believe anybody can do it. It's just going to take some time.
Awesome. A couple more have come in. How do you make your own presets?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So that was a major learning curve. There's not a lot of information out there on how to do it. So I had been making my own presets I use an application called Lightroom, whether it's on my phone or on my computer for client photos. I use Lightroom, which is an Adobe product. And I had been making my own presets through Lightroom for years, just because it was a faster way to edit. So basically, I had decided that there was a certain way that I liked photos to look. I would typically increase the contrast a little bit. I would increase the brightness a little bit. I would maybe pull down the highlights so those weren't super bright, pull up the shadows a little bit so they weren't so dark, maybe increase the saturation so the color popped a little bit more. And I was doing this on every single photo. So every single photo really had like the same recipe, and that's really what a preset is. So I essentially just saved that recipe, and you, once you kind of get a photo to where you want it, there's literally a button that you push in Lightroom that says save as preset. So that's what I did. And I did that for years and years. And then I would tweak them and create new ones, create like a black and white preset or a preset that I only used indoors, like just to make my editing faster. And then about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I work with a blogger pretty regularly. And then I've got a sister, and both of them spend a lot of time on social media. And they were like, there is no reason why you can't sell these. Like if you're using it, and at the time they were using it because I had kind of helped them out, but you should absolutely sell these presets. People would buy them. And that was where I really ran into a learning curve, because there's basically no information on how to export a preset and how to sell it and how to deliver it to people. And that took a lot of figuring out, and it's not an easy process. It's, you know, anytime you work with technology, it's kind of a pain in the butt. So it was a little bit of a pain in the butt, but I'm so glad I did it, because it's something that now makes me money every single month. And it's connected me with a lot of people who maybe have struggled with editing in the past, and now they're like, oh my gosh, it's so easy because of these presets. So it's been a really cool business venture.
And I am a customer of those presets, and like I had mentioned, this is not my area of expertise, and I love them. So shameless plug, they're wonderful. A couple other quick questions have come in. Okay, so you said that you got most of your clients from Instagram. Did you advertise your business on Instagram? Good question.
Yeah, really good question. So I definitely get a lot of clients from Instagram. I would probably say that I get the majority of clients by word of mouth and referral. So that just goes to show like the experience that you're providing clients and how you're making a client feel. I think that that means more than anything else. Like if I can have a client leave a photo shoot saying like, oh my gosh, that was so fun, that wasn't awkward at all, like you made me feel so comfortable, that's going to get me so many more referrals than a Facebook ad would. So that's definitely where my focus is. And then I like to use content marketing as opposed to formal advertising. So instead of running an ad on Facebook or Instagram that says like, hi, I'm Maddie and this is what I do, and there's nothing wrong with that, what I will do instead is I do a lot of educational content. So I write a blog, I'm starting a podcast, I'll do random educational tidbits on Instagram stories, and I just share a lot. And that's really how my Instagram has grown and how my client base has grown. It's how I have an audience that is farther than just Sioux Falls at this point, because when I'm sharing stuff that people find valuable, they share it with their people, and they share it with their people. And it's just this nice, like, effect, I guess, that kind of makes me reach farther than I would normally. So that's my go-to, is content marketing. And it works really well for me because I love content. Like I love putting together education and things that will help people. I love that it allows me to connect with others. So that's typically how I go about doing it. It's definitely going to be more of a marathon than a sprint, but again, I'm in this for the long haul. I don't have any intentions of burning out. And sometimes that's hard. Like I'm at the end of a week that I'm really exhausted, and I know that I have to scale back a little bit. But I think when you grow a business slowly and strategically, it's just going to be better in the long run.
Okay, one more has come in, and then I also want to note, I know the YouTube video link is not working. If you tell me that, and I forgot, on your computers, you're not going to have access to that. So let me go and as you're answering your final question, and I will get the safe share link so that we can watch that YouTube video. But the final question that we've gotten, Maddie, is what type of lens and camera is your favorite?
Ooh, this is a fun question. So I use a Nikon D850. I recently upgraded. I have two, actually. I probably need to get rid of one, but I have two Nikon D750s, and I use them for years. They're wonderful cameras, and recently upgraded to the 850 because the file size is a little bit larger, or it can be larger. And working with commercial clients now, I have clients that need file sizes for like billboards and really large print advertising. So that made sense for me. It also is even better in low light. And honestly, it's just crisper, which typically you don't see that from a camera body. That's more of a lens thing, but it's a powerful, powerful camera. So I love it. Nikon D850, big fan. And then I would say my favorite lens is typically the 85 millimeter 1.4. And that's going to be, it's going to create a really pretty, what's called bokeh. Basically, it's the lens compression, and it's what makes the background look really blurry and almost like buttery and smooth. The 85 does that really, really well. I also use the 50 a lot, 50 millimeter, which is basically, if you were looking at just a scene or a person or whatever, a 50 millimeter is about what your natural eye sees. And I like that too, because I like being able to kind of see the whole scene. So oftentimes for my branding clients, I'll use the 50, and then for weddings and seniors, and for some detail shots, I'll use the 85. So those are my go-to. I only shoot prime lenses, which means they're a fixed focal length. So I don't use zooms or anything. So I move my feet quite a bit, but they're really, really sharp. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, those were great questions, guys. Thanks for asking. As I mentioned, okay, I sent out the YouTube video in a safe share format, so your Branson School computer should have access to that. If you're still having a hard time viewing that branding video, just email me or your homeroom teacher, and they can get it to me, Mrs. Nedved, and we'll make sure we have access to that, because I think that will be kind of a cool look at what Maddie was just telling us all about. Also, if you're watching this as a recording and you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me, and we can get those questions off to Maddie. Maddie, would you mind throwing your screen on one more time, just so that last page of your slideshow, if you still have it open, so we can see your contact information one more time. And other than that, a huge thank you to Maddie. I hope you guys all got a lot out of it. I know I sure did, just like I said, learning more, and I really appreciate, Maddie, you taking the time. So that's all we have. Thank you again. Emma says bye, thanks, it was fun. Sienna says thank you, Maddie. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. If you're a student attending, remember you do get a homework pass for coming. So email the teacher of the class you would like to use your homework pass or extra credit for, and they will mark it off. But a thank you from Leanna. Thank you from Allison. Bye. Thank you, Abby. See you later. Jaden says he's glad he came. So awesome. So great to hear from all of you. Thank you, Maddie. We'll be in touch, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.